You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. Fidelity's Option Trade Builder tool can help you confidently build an options trade in 3 simple steps. Just choose a strategy, select a contract, and then review the benefits and risks of the trade. Learn more about Option Trade Builder at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program where we break down everything going on the other side of the fence, on the crypto derivative side of the fence. So we'll talk some Bitcoin options and some futures and indeed the spot, and we'll get into the ALTCOIN, ETH, and all that other fun stuff. We've been off for a little bit here, of course, for the holidays here in the U.S., but we're happy to get back going. My name, of course, is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting The Options Insider Radio Network. I have a great guest joining me on the program today, so without further ado, let's dive right on into the Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the program where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And next up on the program, we have a newcomer to the show and indeed to the network. He is Lloyd Wood, a.k.a. Swizzlesticks. He's the advisor and senior content manager over there for the folks behind the Verge currency. Lloyd, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Thanks for having us on today, Mark. Great to be with you. I hope I'm fairly entertaining today.
Well, with a handle like Swizzlesticks,
no guarantees.
Now we expect a lot from you after that. Well,
let's jump right in. What do you want to know?
Well, let's start with all of our first-timers. Why don't you go ahead and give our audience a little bit of an overview of your background in the financial and indeed the crypto space, and then let's dive right into it. What the heck is this Verge currency thing I've been hearing so much about?
All right. Well, sounds good. Well, first of all, just a little bit about myself. I live here in the U.S., but Verge is a very international team. I kind of give both of you, or both sides at the same time. Verge is a decentralized cryptocurrency that started in 2014. They did not have an ICO. They did not have a pre-mine. So basically, we have existed since the inception in 2014 with zero funds other than donations, which is a spectacular feat in and of itself. But Verge is completely staffed by volunteers like myself. So almost everyone has a day job. Nobody is on a payroll or anything like that. So myself, I live in Kentucky, and I am founder and partial owner in a mid-sized managed services provider. That's basically fancy talk for an IT department for hire for mid-sized businesses. And that's what I do from day to day, but I also volunteer for Verge just because, well, there's a lot of different reasons why I do, but it's something that piques my interest. I've been in crypto since I guess probably 2010. I'm one of those guys who mined a little bit back in the beginning, and if I ever find those private keys, you'll probably never hear from me again.
I was going to say, you'd be on the island if you were mining back in those days.
Exactly. It was one of those things where it was worth zero, and I think I ran a miner on a virtual machine via Linux on a Windows PC for, I don't even remember. It was a couple of months, but I have no idea. I don't even remember what the balance was, but I did actually accrue Bitcoin. But past that, I lost some in the empty GOX. So I'm kind of an old timer when it comes to this stuff. But I didn't really start getting heavily involved again until probably 2016 or something like that. But back to Verge, I kind of gave you a little bit of a rundown. Like I said, it started in 2014, decentralized. Anybody can contribute to the code or help out the team if they want. And we just have a massive community and a massive following. Hopefully one of these days our price will reflect that. But kind of started as a pet project by Justin Vendetta, a.k.a. Soonrock. And he had been running a bunch of mining pools back in the early days of crypto, and was like, you know what, let's just get together a couple of guys, a couple of devs, and start a coin. And then it evolved into a privacy-centric project, and here we are today. Still around, still kicking.
So let's get into that a little bit, because obviously we've had a lot of guests here on the program representing and participating in a wide variety of different digital assets and coins and tokens, and you name it. They've been on the show talking about different ones and why that one has captured their interest, has captured their trading activity. In the case of you guys over there with the Verge currency, it's almost like a passion. You guys are, like you mentioned, you have a day job, but you're volunteering to kind of be one of the front people out here for this. Why Verge? Why is this the one you have centered all of your crypto hopes and dreams, for lack of a better term, around? Is it just the fact that it's more decentralized than others? Is that what brings you to the party? What is it around Verge that keeps you and these other volunteers so invested in it?
I am not a fan of inflationary currencies. I think there is more manipulation going on than we will ever see when it comes to fiat currencies. Specifically when it comes to government intervention, the Fed, that kind of stuff. And I also grew up very poor and very disadvantaged. And I can still look back at my upbringing and where I came from and see people that are affected by the disability to access banks or proper financing or things like that. So those are a couple of reasons why I got into it. Also, I'm a very big privacy advocate. That's one thing that really interests me. Everything you do online, on social media, email, searches, Google, doesn't matter. It's all being cataloged and sold to the highest bidder. Actually, I wrote an article not that long ago. MasterCard, Visa, and Amex are actually selling your transaction details to interested parties. So they're actually using that information nowadays to influence your healthcare insurance rates in the United States. We hear all these horror stories about China and how they've got this social scoring that's coming into play, where if you disagree strongly with the government, it's fairly certain you're not going to be able to get a loan for a house, and that's going online next year, is what my reading tells me. And what's going to happen to us? It just creeps in very slowly until everything is completely different and your hands are completely tied.
Like the old Black Mirror episode where everything in your life was geared around your social media ratings, pretty much. So you're right, that is a bit of a bleak dystopian view of the future. But, I've heard similar things from a lot of people. They come to crypto because they're lured by a lot of the things they've heard, that it's decentralized, that it's untrackable, and all these other things. And they maybe start to realize that maybe it's not quite as much as they think, at least with the major ones like Bitcoin. Was that your process as well? You came in, you got lured into the dark side, sounds like, by mining Bitcoin and some others, and then maybe for your purposes, Bitcoin and a lot of the top 5 didn't go far enough, and so Verge is the one that's meeting your needs from that perspective. Is that pretty much how it unfolded?
Well, how it unfolded. Bitcoin is anonymous in that you don't have to fill out a form and attach your name and your email address and your phone number to a Bitcoin address. But the problem is with all the other data mining that goes on. So it would be extremely easy for somebody who is interested in you to watch your social media and know that you're into crypto. So then all they would have to do is find out what your IP address is and watch for Bitcoin transactions coming from that IP address. And the next thing you know, 99.9% certainty, if they see a Bitcoin transaction come from a node that is at your IP address that we know you surf Facebook from and talk about how you like Bitcoin from, bam, they know who you are. They know who you are, and then all they have to do is look at the blockchain and see exactly what you're doing with your Bitcoin.
So it sounds like the Verge then is a way around that. You mentioned kind of the price of it. In case you're curious, listen, want to check it out for yourself. The ticker out there is XVG. And you're right, Lloyd, it hasn't really, shall we say, moved the needle from a price perspective yet. Coming into today's show, it's still at pretty much a very small fraction of a cent. We're in the thousands, about 4 thousandths of a percent here, but it's getting there. Looks like it spiked up not too long ago, back in May, to about 1/100th of a cent. Is that something you guys expect over time as more people maybe start to flock to this ecosystem you guys are building, this decentralized kind of network that you guys are hoping to see a little bit more of that translated in the XVG price?
Well, the thing is, we try to stay price agnostic as a team, which I think is a very important thing. You can get yourself in hot water really fast with a lot of different people if you're out there making price predictions or trying to pump things or, making a big deal out of this or that. That's usually not really a big deal. We all know about it. We all see it. The thing is, for the longest time through this bear market, news has not made a bit of difference whatsoever, and it's starting to make a difference again, so that's a good thing. And that's not just with us, that's with a lot of different projects. You're starting to see a little bit of movement on news occasionally. But going back to that price action, 2017, 2018 was a fabulous year for us, or time period, I guess I should say. But who knows what's next? Who knows what's next? I do think we have some opportunities. If I didn't, I wouldn't be wasting my time here. So.
Foolish me. My chart only went back a year, but you're right. I dialed it back for 5 years now, and you're right. I can see that blip up to a much higher level, 0.22, so far higher than where it is right now. That was actually back in the heady go-go days of December 2017, which, as you'll recall, listeners, Bitcoin was marching inexorably towards 20,000. CME and CME and CBOE were racing each other out the door to see who could be first to list a Bitcoin future. It seemed like all the wind was in the crypto sales, and clearly Verge was getting a nice little lift from that. It's obviously come off. And, it kind of raises an interesting point here. We've had other people on the show, Lloyd, who do other things. Maybe it's a utility token or other things like that, where the value of the actual currency itself is perhaps not exactly related to what's going on with the actual thing and the actual value proposition it can provide to an end user for some other related, maybe it's a certain function or something like that. So it is kind of an interesting area for some of these, smaller altcoin out there where they have this very almost negligible market value, and yet they are providing a value and a service that is almost seemingly unrelated. Is that difficult for you guys to try to wrap your heads around that and kind of divorce yourself from the value of this thing that you guys clearly value yourselves and spend a lot of time working on and volunteering and trying to get the word out there about, and yet, for whatever reason, the quote-unquote market value hasn't really responded of late?
Through this bear market, yes, it has become extremely easy to ignore the price. Because you have to pretty much every day. Not only on your Verge holdings, your Bitcoin holdings, or whatever else you may be holding, but you kind of just have to keep an open mind and hope things turn around at some point. And I believe they will. I believe that the market as a whole for crypto is probably going to turn around at some point, and once that kind of livens up, I think you'll see a lot of alternate currencies probably taking off. And I think, I hope we are one of them. But if not, I'm still in it for the privacy, for the technology, for the ease of use, and I'll still be right here doing what I'm doing.
Let's talk about that ease of use for a second, because you guys actually came on our radar here on the show recently. We had a guest talking about some of the headlines that have been floating around you guys lately as it pertains to, shall we say, the adult industry. And I believe it was PayPal kind of curtailing a lot of crypto payments and Bitcoin payments to that sector. And so you guys were kind of heralded as an alternative to that, in a way to get the funds to those people that were otherwise being clamped down on. What's that hubbub been like for you guys over there? And maybe explain to our listeners, I kind of get a cursory overview for them. Explain to our listeners how all that unfolded and how that impacted you guys.
Yeah. So, early spring of 2018, Justin and some of the guys, I was not on the team at that point. I joined later that year, but they struck a deal, had a crowd fundraiser, raised some funds, got those together, and formed a partnership with MindGeek, which owns a lot of adult properties. And so, one of the properties is Pornhub. So if you want to get a subscription to Pornhub, you can pay with Verge in addition to paying with Euro or USD or whatever else. But also on the flip side of that, if you are a content creator, if you are making videos and posting them to Pornhub and getting a lot of traffic, just like YouTube, they pay out as a content creator, and a lot of those content creators were getting paid via PayPal, and PayPal pulled the rug out from underneath them. But let me kind of tie everything together here with that denial of banking statement I made earlier. That's something that weighs heavily on me, and that's something I'll always fight for. And I've actually seen that firsthand in the firearms industry. I've seen that. We're seeing it currently firsthand through MindGeek with that, and it affects a lot of people. We're seeing it with CBD, with marijuana-related products. You are hard-pressed to find a bank that will process credit card transactions for you, even in the states where pot is legal. It is almost impossible. And then, going back to the guns thing, a friend of mine here in town owns a large gun shop. Now, it's always been against PayPal's policy to sell firearms using PayPal, but he wasn't selling firearms. He was just selling accessories for firearms through a very high-volume online site, and they locked his account with like $60,000 in it. And it took him about 9 months to get it back. So, where does this end? Where does this crusade end? This moral superiority that, if you make money in firearms, you can't get paid and you can't bank. And if you make money in marijuana or CBD, you can't get paid. And if you make money in the adult entertainment industry, you can't get paid. That's what concerns me, and that's why I do what I do. It's not right. Let's rewind 100 years. Here in the U.S., the proprietors of adult entertainment houses of ill repute were highly regarded citizens in many circumstances. And if you were African American or Irish American or first generation immigrant, you couldn't get access to banking. So what's going to be next? If adult entertainment, you can't get banking. Guns, you can't get banking. What's going to be next? What's going to be the next thing that the moral police decide to put a chokehold on?
So I guess you can maybe describe Verge, sum it all up as judgment-free access to capital and banking. Is that a good way to sum it up there, Lloyd?
I would very much sum it up that way. Yes. Yep.
It's interesting. You bring up an interesting topic, which is one we get to a lot on this program as well, which is, I think, of interest to anyone involved in the crypto and indeed the crypto derivative space here in the U.S. Is, of course, just the notion of kind of what you're touching on here, the regulatory side, and how kind of in the weeds we are right now, pun intended for what you're talking about earlier there, Lloyd, with the regulation on the crypto side, and how there's a reason why we've had so many guests on this program from outside the U.S., a lot of them from Asia and Australia, but also Europe and other regions, because other markets, other parts of the world have really been much more forward-thinking on this side of the fence than our U.S. markets, and there's a reason for that. We have a much larger market here, and they're a little bit slower to take the plunge, but still, it does frustrate a lot of people I know here in the U.S. that we're so slow to move on the regulatory side from a financial perspective. Is this an issue that concerns you guys and the Verge team as well, or do you think, that the heck with the regulators, you guys are working on a completely decentralized basis? You could maybe just do an end run around the whole thing, Lloyd.
Well, you can't do an end run around the whole thing because if you make it too private, if you make it too opaque, the first thing you're going to do is attract the wrong people. You're going to attract the criminals, and that's not what we want to do. That's not what we're interested in. And you're also going to once again get yourself back into a situation where the average person can't use you if you implement too much on the security and the opacity side of everything. So we try to stay in the middle. We really concentrate on protecting your IP address, which if you protect your IP address and you're using cryptocurrency, that is a lot of privacy that a lot of other coins do not offer. Sure, you can use Bitcoin with Tor, but the average person is not going to be able to figure out how to do that, where all of our wallets have that built right in. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, but it's there, and it comes with the wallet. And it doesn't matter which wallet you're using. If you're using the iOS wallet or the desktop wallet or the Lite wallet, it's all there. But yes, we actually do take a pretty close view of that. We were on the cusp of implementing Ring CT, which is an anonymity protocol that kind of hides your transactions amid a wash of other transactions, fake transactions. But two things. That was compromised, and then the next new hotness was Mimblewimble, and it appears that has also been compromised as well. So there's no perfect solution there, but we're also trying to stay on what would be considered the good side of the regulators. As far as locking us down and making us not available to any markets or specific markets.
Interesting. Got to walk that middle ground. That's something we hear a lot here on the program as well. If you go too far in one direction or the other, you may be attracting elements that perhaps aren't sustainable or good for you in the long run. There's a lot to unpack there. We have to keep rolling. We'll get back to this more a little bit when we get into the altcoin. But now it's time for us to keep on rolling right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown. This is the portion of the show where we break down all that trading activity, the volume, the volatility, the SKEW, all that good stuff that's going on in the number one crypto trading market, of course, Bitcoin, and that talks the futures, the spot, the options, all that good stuff. We've been off for a little bit, like I mentioned, so coming in on now 2 weeks here since we've done the show, so a lot has happened. Unfortunately, most of it of late, at least over the past week, has pretty much been to the dark side, to the downside. We're down almost exactly 900 handles from where we were on our last show here 2 weeks ago. Coming into Showtime, we're right around the 7,300 level here in Bitcoin. So unfortunately for all the bulls out there who were maybe looking for a little bit of a holiday seasonal move to the upside, didn't exactly see that, or at least couldn't exactly sustain that coming into this week. We had a bit of a rally earlier and gave up most of that pretty much this past week. And then, of course, I think worryingly for a lot of people as well, at least for the crypto bulls out there, we broke the 7,000 handle to the downside, got down to 68.93 on the 27th, actually hit 6,500, 65.59 on the 25th. So not exactly good times for the bulls. Hit a high this last Friday, the 29th of 78.09 there on the upside. So I had a nice range there, 1,300 or so handle range out there. But I think that downside part was what was worrying a lot of the folks out there on the crypto bullish side, which I know, judging by your feedback, is many of you. Lloyd, you mentioned how, what you guys are working on over the Verge is not exactly reflective of what's going on in the broad crypto market, which I think for a lot of people could be attractive. But you also, I know, watch a lot of the big trading crypto products out there, including, of course, Bitcoin. You kind of can't ignore it. It's all the oxygen in the room some days. What is your take on what we've been seeing out there lately, particularly this pronounced sell-off and the breakthrough to below 7,000 that we saw over the course of the past week?
Mark, I wish I had a lot more to put in on this. My comments on trading are probably going to be like peanut gallery, incursions occasionally, because I just don't trade that much. However, I don't know what is causing this. We were looking good there for a while. Now we're back down, then we're up and back down. But this latest, price action we're seeing on Bitcoin, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, it is looking pretty dire. We're going to get to some of that in a little bit. We have a listener question, I believe, about the options action. So we'll get to some of that, I think, here in a second. Let's break down, as we like to do as well, a lot of the what's going on in the volatility space. Of course, all of these analytics brought to you courtesy of our friends over there in SKEW land. They now have the right URL. It's SKEW, SKEW.com. You have to do SK3W, any of that fun stuff anymore. They use some of their new round of funding and bought that URL. I encourage you to check out the interview we just had with them a couple of weeks ago here on the show to learn about all the new stuff they have cooking over there. If you do that, click on the Bitcoin options. You can see all this fun data we're going to talk about right now, including the vol. Let's start in the realized land, the realized volatility. It's down quite a bit. It's down from about 73.5% on our last show, now down to about 52.5%, so a little over 20 points. Of course, that's 30-day realized, so a lot has happened over the course of that frame of reference. If you want to drill down to maybe where things are trading right now, let's go out to the 30-day implied. That's up a bit from our last show. It was 56.5%. Last show, now it's up to about 63%. So vol ticking higher. That may not surprise you given the fact that we've seen a bit of downside going on of late. Obviously, vol is movement in both directions. So if we're seeing movement in a 1,300-point range is certainly movement. That's going to contribute to the vol as well. But people always tend to get, particularly for these assets that have a lot of long-only players out there, they get a little more spooked. We tend to drift down here to the downside. Let's go look at some of the options volume going up out here on places like Deribit. And actually, as you might imagine, over the course of the past couple of weeks, we've had some spots of pretty strong volume. In particular, the big day was the 21st. That was a Thursday. So not this past week, but the week before. That hit 120 million in terms of volume. Our barometer out there is around 30 million. That's where we start to pay attention when it gets north of that 30 million level, and it was well north of that on the 21st. That's also the day when Bitcoin really started trending to the downside. It broke 8,000 to the downside and started moving pretty aggressively towards that 7,000 handle. So that seemed like that was enough to really set off the forces, the players that be out there, and really start driving some paper flow out there on Deribit. So 120 million, that's the most we've seen in some time out there on Deribit. And other days were floating north of 30 million as well, but that was certainly the big one that caught our eye. In terms of big ones that caught our eye on the trading side, probably wouldn't surprise you that leading the dance out here in terms of most contracts. That's probably the easiest way to filter it, just the largest size trade. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, it's the most from net premium or anything else like that, just from total contract size. We start there, and then we drill down. And the biggest trade we saw on that front was some put love. In particular, the Jan 5500 puts going up. Looks like paper was buying those 384 times back when Bitcoin was right around a little bit shy of 7,500, 74. So on the 29th of November. Also worth noting, it seemed like it was a bit of a spread, maybe what we would call on some of our other programs, a bit of a house money roll, because also going up right around the same time was 100 of the DEES 7,000 puts. So obviously Bitcoin had already broken 7,000, and looks like someone here may be taking that off. And that's why we say a house money roll, because these 7,000 puts probably look pretty good. Maybe not as good as if he took them off a little bit earlier. In fact, the 29th is perhaps an interesting time to be doing a roll like this, because we were starting to turn and get to the highs of the week on that day. So interesting time to be rolling your downside. But it sounds like someone is maybe continuing to be a little bit spooked. Looks like they maybe sold out the 7,000 puts 100 times and then turned them around. That's why we call it house money roll. They're doing a ratio. They're buying more, almost 4-1 on the Jan 5500 puts. These are regular Jan, not Jan 2021 or anything like that. So that's a lot of downside, listeners, to be leveraging up roughly almost 4-1 here on the put side. So someone, at least for the big trade of the week here, seems like they are prognosticating more downside to come. In terms of the vol and term structure, it's similar to last show, but a lot steeper. That arc going out there is a lot steeper. We're still around, like I said, in that mid-50-odd handle there and a little bit higher in that front DEES weekly contract. Then it starts ticking up. And when you get out to June of next year, you get north of the 70 level for implied. And it gets there a lot faster now, so a little bit steeper out here than it was on our show 2 weeks ago. Going out to the call-put side of the equation, as you might imagine, upside, then a lot of downside has kind of erased all the call love we had on the show last time. Last time it was about 61% in the favor of the calls. This week it's down to pretty much a coin flip, 50-50 calls versus puts here. So that's pretty much where we're hanging on the call to put side. You can see that you start looking at the open interest numbers as well. Open interest, a lot has come off the board since our last show. We're down from exactly 500 million to about 416 million out there. A lot of that can be found here from what rolled off the board since our last show. Last show, we had Nov 22nd and Nov 29th contracts were still open, and a fair amount of the OI was aggregated in there. It was around 20-odd thousand contracts that has now rolled off the board since our last show, and it hasn't really been replaced. December is still the lion's share of the paper out there, about 35,000 contracts. It has grown somewhat, but not enough to make up for the losses for those weekly contracts, hence the OI coming in a fair amount since our last show. Let's head on out to the futures. Before I get to the futures, obviously a lot of people fixate on the spot here, Lloyd. I'm just curious for you guys out there, is this a product category that you guys pay attention to or are even aware of? You know, people who like to trade the spot, the future offers a lot of interesting, benefits for them, and also obviously a lot of leverage, particularly for a CME coin that is 5x. Is this a product category you guys watch at all? The CME or the Bitcoin futures, or is you guys pretty much focused entirely on the spot there, Lloyd?
Pretty much on the spot. I don't think anyone is doing futures contracts or anything like that with Verge that I'm aware of at this point in time. Now, I pay a fair amount of attention to it personally, the futures on Bitcoin, but past that, that's not really something that we're focused on. Of course, it'd be great, if we could get there someday, but I think we're a long way away from that.
Yeah, you might have to challenge that 0.22 level, maybe a little bit higher first before you get a listed future on. That would be interesting, though. You're right. That might drive some interesting trading activity as a result.
Yeah. When we did have that large spike in 2017, we actually were number 2 in volume. I think on Binance and Bittrex for several weeks on end. It was very short-lived, but we might have qualified for one at the time.
Yeah, you could have struck by the iron is hot. Really quickly, we touched on it earlier, how you had that rally in December. Was it just, like I mentioned, that was at the height of crypto fervor? Was that what drove that volume, or was there some specific development with Verge that really drove that spike in the price?
There was a lot of things going on around that. There was some tweets from John McAfee about privacy coins that had mentioned us. I don't really know, other than that, which doesn't seem like that should really drive that much price action. Other than that, I don't know what it was. Like I said, that was before I was on the team, but it was just spectacular. I think it was the highest one-year gains on any crypto coin in the history of crypto.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm glad you didn't come in on that month, Lloyd, because that could have been expensive if you loaded up on all your Verge on that particular month.
I was in before that, thank God. But I think a lot of people got burned there, which I feel badly for them, but, that's the market.
Yeah, we saw similar things play out with XRP around that time frame a little bit later. There were tweets that was going to come to Coinbase, and that shot up from 30-odd cents up to $3. So a lot of products in the altcoin space had similar trajectory, straight up and then right back down. Interesting. I didn't know that it was McAfee tweeting about you guys that may have driven some of that paper. The odd things that drive your volume out there in the altcoin. Before we get to the altcoin, let's talk some more volume here on the Bitcoin, in particular the futures. As you might imagine, was a pretty strong volume week here, a couple of weeks over there. Let's start in CME land. Coming into today, we had about 5,000, close to it, 4,500 contracts on the tape. Remember, of course, CME futures, a 5X contract. Strong week preceding this as well. Friday, 7,400 contracts. Thursday, obviously closed for the Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S. Wednesday, a big day, almost 12,000 contracts on the tape. Tuesday, about almost 7,000. Monday and Friday, the week before, Friday the 22nd, both over 11,000 contracts as well, 11,500, 11,200. So pretty strong volume days as Bitcoin has been fluctuating pretty aggressively out there. A lot of guys have questions about BAKKT. BAKKT also doing pretty decent numbers, as you might imagine. This kind of rising tide lifts all boats out here. Remember, BAKKT, a one-coin contract, so a little bit different beast from a multiplier perspective. By the way, if you guys are curious about BAKKT volume, I highly encourage you to follow on Twitter the BAKKT volume bot. It's just at BAKKTbot. All it does is exactly as it sounds. It just tweets out the volume every 4 hours from BAKKT futures. So all you who've been asking us, you guys should be following this BAKKT bot. I don't believe it's in any way endorsed or official, but it's a great little thing if you want some insight into what's been going on. Today looks like the BAKKT bot tweeted they've had nearly 2,000 contracts, about 1,900 and change going up there. Remember, that's 1-to-1 from a contract to coin perspective. There, the last price they had listed there was a little bit shy of 7,300, 7,293. Also worth noting, they have set a new weekly volume record of 124 million and a max open interest level of about 4.3 million. So all of you who've been kind of doing a lot of hand-wringing and worrying about what's going on with BAKKT, there you go. Of course, it might be interesting now. There's some rumors we've been floated before that the BAKKT CEO may be headed to the Senate. So how that impacts things will be interesting to see as we keep on rolling right on into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, welcome to the altcoin universe. Lloyd, you obviously live in the aforementioned altcoin universe. That's where you spend your time that at least isn't on your day job. All things Verge is pretty much firmly in that altcoin realm. But outside of Verge and obviously outside of Bitcoin, what are some of the other altcoin that are really on your radar over there these days, Lloyd?
Oh, I really like the guys over at Digibyte are good guys, good team. I think they've got a solid project. And a lot of mixed feelings at times in the altcoin space, but I am a fan of Litecoin. I'm not always a fan of exactly the moves they make, but I think overall they are an extremely strong project, and that's probably about all I can comment on without getting in too much trouble.
I hear you, but it is interesting to see, just how everyone who comes on usually has a couple of interesting altcoin in their back pocket that we weren't familiar with or weren't tracking, like we had with you guys recently and others. So it's always fascinating for me to ask people where their attention is focused, because the altcoin space is so enormous. There are thousands of these things out there, and all of them doing different things and having different values, most of them in the fraction of a cent level, but like you guys, but still, it is interesting to watch those. Of course, for the top 5, obviously, we've got the old friend Bitcoin, obviously still clearly dominant. Number 2 out there is going to be ETH. And ETH coming at showtime was at right around 147, closing on 148. That puts it down right around 30 handles from where it was this time a couple of weeks ago here on the show. We like ourselves a little bit of ETH options. A lot of you guys have asked for more insight into the ETH options marketplace. So going to start filtering more of that into the program as well. Let's get out there, look at some of the vol and everything else that's going on. Also, this data coming from our friends over there in SKEW land. If you pull that up, you'll see the 30-day realize is pretty much unched around 58% from where it was 2 weeks ago. A lot of that is still reflective of the fact that it's a long frame of reference, and it's still not a ton of volume lighting it up on the ETH options side, so it's kind of hard to budge that number. You look at the applied, you see a little bit more movement. The implied has moved up from about 65% on our last show up to about 71.5%. So, again, not surprising. A lot of the altcoin taking a bit of a beating, particularly over the last week. And so some of that vol coming up, as you might expect. Call to put, we mentioned on our last show, when you're looking at options in ETH land, it's pretty much all calls all the time. That is even more so the case this week. It was 85% last show. This time it's a whopping 91%. So if you want to play in ETH puts, good luck to you. Not a lot of action there. The OI also down quite a bit from our last show. Is at about 46 million. So that puts it in a frame of reference. Remember, I said we were at close to $500 million, 500 million on our last show at least, exactly from a Bitcoin options OI perspective. So you're talking about a tenth of that when you're talking about ETH. Right around, it was at 46 million. Now it's down to 39 million on this show. So roughly a tenth or so in terms of overall open interest size compared to Bitcoin options. If you're wondering where all that is aggregated, pretty much all of that still in the D's contracts, pretty much where all the game in town is. And we still we joked about it on our last show, but still that OI, if you look at by strikes, remember I said we were at, coming into the show here, at about a 147 and change on ETH, and still the lion's share of the open interest is at the 600 strike. So clearly some perhaps legacy or perhaps some overly optimistic paper. Either way, a good chunk of it almost tied with close to where we are right now at the 160 level here on terms of strike open interest. So a lot of interesting stuff out there. Our old friend Ripple, a.k.a. XRP, also having a bit of a rough period here. It's down right about 3 cents or so, again, down to a little bit shy of the 22 cent level, 21.9 or so out here right now. So we were at about a 25.9, I believe, on our last show. So yeah, yet again, the endless drama that is XRP kind of had a similar trajectory, like I mentioned, to what happened with Verge. Had a nice big spike, and then it kind of came off again. Now, of course, it's been languishing here of late, and there's a lot of legal woes and other things going on in that payment side of the space that have kind of been weighing on Ripple. So all of you who thought maybe the recent flurries above 30 cents was going to be the start of a new price action, new regime, so far at least, not exactly the case, threatening instead 20 cents to the downside. And Lloyd, you said your other favorite out there is Litecoin. Litecoin having a bit of a rough week as well, off about 10.5 handles. Oh, it seems like down to about 45.25. Seems like such a distant memory. The massive run up, the explosion in Q1 into Q2, leading into that halving event, and now it's kind of a distant memory, and we're seeing that reflected again here in the price, down about 10.5 handles. And Bitcoin Cash rounding out our top 5 here, down a whopping 34 handles from where it was on our last show. So it's been rough times here, kind of across the board. Actually, it looks like about 24 handles. I take that back. 24 handles on Bitcoin Cash run. So not quite as dire as maybe initially thought, but still a lot of red on the screen out here in the altcoin universe. Let's see what you guys have on our screens, though, with a little bit of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, welcome to the Crypto Questions, a portion of the show where you guys take the reins. Let's start here. Let's just go in order to see how many we could squeeze in here at the tail end of the show. Are there any crypto outside? Oh, this comes from VR. I should mention the listener. VR wants to know, are there any crypto outside of Bitcoin and ETH that have vibrant derivatives markets? Thanks, and I'll be listening. Well, I think the operative word there is vibrant, Mr. or Mrs. VR. That's a obviously subjective term. Some people might not even think that the ETH, which is a clear number 2, that the ETH is particularly vibrant. Like I mentioned, there's a shy of 50 million contracts, not 50 million in terms of open interest outstanding there. So not a large market. 91% of it is aggregated on the call side of the ledger. So can't really call it deep and liquid. So some folks may even argue and take issue with people calling ETH a vibrant derivatives markets. And the truth is, once you get outside of ETH, it falls off markedly yet again. You have a hard time finding, you get some perpetuals here or there, and on the future side, you might get a little bit of volume. In terms of options, there really aren't a whole heck of a lot of other that I would put even up there in that same conversation. It's pretty much all Bitcoin all the time, and then a decent amount of ETH on the side. And then when it comes to options, not really much else to speak of. Futures, you got a few out there that will do some volume from a perpetual perspective. You can go out to some of these non-US exchanges like BitMEX and others, and they'll have some of these funky perpetuals or 3-month contracts that will do decent volume on some of these other coins. But it's going to be mostly in the coins you've heard of. It's not going to be in some funky altcoin that's doing a lot of derivatives volume. That's just not what we've seen. I wish I had another answer for you, Mr. or Mrs. VR. I wish I had. There's this unknown altcoin that's doing a ton of paper from a futures and options perspective. It's just not really the case. You need to have a vibrant spot. It's going to lead, like we were just talking about with Verge. You need to have a vibrant spot and a decent market for that, and that might lead to a future, and that might eventually lead to an option. It's kind of hard to start it all at once or to start some of these derivatives where the spot market isn't exactly thriving yet. So we're looking for them. We're with you. We like to see more names trading out there than just the top few, but that's kind of where we are right now from an overall crypto derivatives perspective. This comes from I'm going to say he's trying to spell out available here, being a little fancy, a little funny. Can you spend some time talking about coins outside the top 5? Well, we just did a whole chunk of an episode about the Verge, so hopefully you like that. Lloyd, what do you think? You think we qualified here for Mr. or Mrs. Available, talking about you guys and some other coins outside the top 5, sir?
Sure. Let's do it.
You think you pleased this listener here, Mr. or Mrs. Available? They want to go beyond the big 5, Lloyd. Oh,
well, what do you want to talk about?
That's the question, right? We try to touch on a lot of different, obviously if you've listened to the show for a while, we try to bring on a broad perspective. Our focus is on the derivative side, so a lot of our guests lean towards that, but we talk about a lot of different things. We've had gaming tokens on the show, a lot of utility things. Obviously, we have these guys here from The Verge. We've experimented and talked about a lot of different things on the altcoin universe. So it's not all top 5 all the time. It's just, like we mentioned with our earlier question, that's kind of just where the volume is, and that's kind of where a lot of the attention and indeed the oxygen in the room is going. So we can't really ignore it. So we can maybe do some special episodes every now and then. I think this one will qualify, talking about some coins that are pretty far outside that top 5. But interesting stuff nonetheless. Here we go. PP4C wants to know, are you seeing a lot of Bitcoin put activity with the recent sell-off? Does the paper show it's heading lower? Where I kind of mentioned earlier in the show, we were talking about the Bitcoin options breakdown, that there was a lot of put paper this week. In particular, the size print looked like it was a bit of a house money roll, which what I mean by that is, of course, someone I believe had the D7000 puts. As we mentioned, it broke through that level this week, so those D7000 puts were probably looking pretty good. He looks like he took those off and rolled them down for a larger size. Looks like about 3.5 to 1 or so. We call that house money. Usually when you do more on the second leg, it means you got some money to burn. You made some money. It's like you're at the casino, you make some money on your first day, and you got 3 days for your trip to Vegas or whatever it might be. So you got some house money to burn. You got to play with it a little bit, so he's got some profits he's sitting on. It sounds like that's the case. That was one of the larger trades you saw this week, but it wasn't the only trade. And it does seem in general the SKEW is also indicating that as well. And that's not surprising. We're seeing a bit of a worm turning to the downside here. You're going to see a lot more puts lighting it up. Like we mentioned, the call to put is also pretty much 50-50 right now in Bitcoin options out there. So flip a coin which way that's going. So a lot of the recent paper, again, there's a huge recency bias there, but a lot of the recent papers seem to be leaning to the dark side, and it's kind of hard to argue with that, at least in the near term. Right, let's wrap it up with some love here, Lloyd. This comes from Victor. Victor says, glad to hear you guys mentioning Verge currency on the last episode. Maybe you can get them on the show. Thanks and love the Crypto Rundown program. Well, Lloyd, sounds like Victor is a fan of what you guys are doing. Hopefully, Victor, you're listening right now, and hopefully you're enjoying the show. What do you think, Lloyd? Clearly you got some other Verge fans out there.
Yeah, we've got a lot of fans out there. I don't know who Victor is right off the top of my head, but Victor, thanks for the shout out there. I hope you're listening, and if not, I hope you catch the broadcast later at some point. But here we are. We're not going away anytime soon.
Doesn't seem like a lot of people are chiming in live, listening right now. Here you got most like Marvin, one of your buddies, say he's happy to listen to you. You got Bill from Senegal Capital, who brought you to our attention a couple of weeks ago. We got Too Lazy to Debug. He says he loves it as well. So a lot of people are chiming in here. They're liking Mark, who I think works with you guys there. He's also he's loving listening to you live. So a lot of folks, clearly there is a community out there around all things Verge. Like we said, we're happy to talk some more altcoin outside of the top 5, particularly when it clearly resonates with you guys out there. All right, unfortunately, that music means we've come to the end of this fascinating journey through the world of altcoin and indeed beyond today here on the program. But before we go, Lloyd, for all these listeners who are listening live and many more who are going to come in after the fact on demand, maybe they want to learn more about what you guys are doing over there in Verge Land. Maybe they want to become a volunteer themselves. Where should they go? What should they do, sir?
We have an extremely active Telegram community. We have a very active Discord community. You can find the links to both of those on our website at vergecurrency.com.
There you go, vergecurrency.com. You can give them a follow over there as well at Verge Currency on the old Twitter machines. Give Lloyd a follow as well. He's at Lloyd Woods with 2 L's over there on the old Twitter as well. Also goes by his nom de crypto of Swizzlesticks. So find him out there. And on behalf of Lloyd and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for sending in such great questions, for listening live, all the fun stuff that you guys do. Keep it coming, and we'll see you back here next week for more of the Crypto Rundown.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.